All right, welcome to this edition of Morgan You Asked For podcast. We should be live on YouTube and I think on Facebook. I'm not 100% sure where this is going for sure, but hopefully we get some people tuning in here. But if not, you'll be able to listen to us regular podcast and Steve Shetler Media Thursday evening for that. We kind of, Trev kind of always sends a rundown of things he wants to talk about, but then today happened. And he sent it out yesterday or maybe even Monday night. Today happened, and we're going to pivot. UNLV quarterback Matt Sluka is essentially stopped. He will not play for UNLV. He's going to preserve his red shirt. He's played 3 games. He is 3-0, beat 2 Big 12 teams in Kansas and Houston as 2 of those 3 wins. And then there's some discrepancy on why he's not playing. And I don't think that is the big picture here. The big picture here is setting a precedence of what could happen in the future and what will happen in the future. And with no rules and regulations, what can happen. And this is what people were afraid of. Just some of the stats that have came out. And the biggest thing that we found out with this, and I listened to Williams and Bloom podcast on Cyclone Fanatic, and obviously Brent Bloom is in charge of Iowa State's We Will Collective. So he is in on this situations a little bit. And he said it's more common than you think that these are handshake agreements, kind of a wink, wink, nod, nod. You're getting this much money. Now, he says We Will has transitioned to especially some of their bigger names. You can use fill-in-the-blank athlete to having contracts. But there are people that just have, kind of handshake agreements that you're going to get this much money. And it's just on them to fulfill their obligation. And then obviously for the We Will Collective or whichever school collective, it's up to them to fill their obligation as well. Trev, just a few quick thoughts, and then I've got a few more stats on here. What have you seen about that? You're obviously closer to Vegas out there in Colorado, but what is being talked about out there? What have you seen and heard?
I've seen conflicting reports from both sides, which is expected. And really what it comes down to me is eventually the truth will come out. If there was an official contract in hand and he darted and is lying about it, shame on him. Flip side to the university, if there was a contract in hand or whoever's involved in that and they didn't keep their end of the deal, shame on them. This is what's going to turn into, though. And if there was a deal in place, imagine an NFL player, an NFL team just saying, we're randomly not going to pay you this week. I mean, it would be a what storm going on. So I'm going to wait for more info to come out. Like I said, whatever side's in the wrong, it's kind of shame on them.
Agreed. And I think, and Brent Bloom, I'm going to credit Brent Bloom for putting this idea. He goes, really nobody might be wrong. He goes, they're both wrong and they both could be right. And I'm going to give you those situations. What's kind of came out is he was promised $100,000. That's kind of what's come out. And there's reports that said he's only been paid $3,000 so far. And he keeps asking for more money and they're not giving it to him. That's the player side. The UNLV side has said they've met every obligation that they've owed him. Not saying a dollar amount, but they've met it. Is there a possibility that they're both right? And I think this could have happened. He's played really well. He's got 2 big-time wins, and he realizes he's worth more than $100,000. His family realized it. His agent realized it. And some team called and said, if you come here next year, we'll pay you, let's just say an SEC team offers him $750,000. But he has to stop playing today to save his red shirt so he can play next year. And it's already in the books. There's no tampering rules, which is, this is why there has to be some guidelines and rules. Somebody got to him and is offering that, and then maybe the kid or the kid's representative went to the collective and say, "Hey, I'm being offered this. I'm worth way more than $100,000. I need $700,000 to stay," and UNLV doesn't have the money or didn't want to pay it. Is there a chance that happened?
Oh yeah, there's a very high chance that happened. That's probably very likely. The flip side of that is, of course, if somebody promised him on behalf of the university or behalf of the collective, and then all of a sudden isn't paying up, and like you
Right.
said, it was just a verbal contract, and maybe the university didn't even know that something like this was in place, and the player thought there was. So both of those, I mean, the truth will come out, I think, eventually. We're going to find out the money trail, I would assume,
Yep.
and who's lying, and like you said, maybe both are in the right and both in the wrong at the same time. And yeah, I won't be surprised on any of it. I just think the truth will come out soon enough.
And he, he came from he played 3 years at Holy Cross and probably got $0 or, I mean, truly a couple $1,000s from the local car dealership. What NIL is truly supposed to be. UNLV probably paid him $50,000 to $100,000. That's kind of what Brent Bloom said. That's kind of the going rate for that type of player. But then he played really well for 3 weeks, and I've, it's been insinuated, and I've heard it from many different people that Rocco Beck turned down $1 million from other schools to stay at Iowa State. Now, I'm very interested to know what we are paying him. I mean, I would guess several $100,000, but I don't know that. So these places are offering all kinds of money, and like they used Auburn as an example, who needs a quarterback. They're desperate to win. Would they pay a guy $1 million to come in with someone that they think would help them win? Sure, they would. And he doesn't look like he's an NFL quarterback. So do you blame the kid to try to maximize his last year of college football? You could go from making $100,000 to $800,000. So you're $700,000 in 1 year of playing football could set yourself up for life. I mean, you can't live on that, but if you invest it and heck of a down payment on a house, or, maybe buy a house for $200,000 and you're 25 years old, you're way ahead of the game. To 99.9% of people, you're that 1%er with 1 year of playing football. So I can't blame the kid totally. We can blame the system, and we can blame everybody involved. We've let it get there. There are no rules. So is it right that the kid quit on his team? No. But who's to say that, it's tough to turn down money when it's offered to you?
Yeah, and in that situation, if he is trying to go get more money, if he knows he's not an NFL player, can't blame the guy. But I'd have to consider doing the same thing if I was young like that and knew I really had no chance to play in the league. You hear about a lot of colleges now that are hiring former NFL GMs to come in and be basically a GM of the college program. You mentioned the Cyclone Collective. They kind of they're starting to figure out what certain players are worth. I'm sure they've got a big spreadsheet of position groups, what other schools are paying when they find out the info. So that's why these colleges are bringing in NFL GMs, because I think eventually here soon there are going to be guidelines put into place, because there has to be.
Well, and the big thing right now, what's happening is every time the NCAA tries to put a rule on there, they get sued and they lose. The reason the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NBA can operate the way they are, they have an exemption from Congress that they can do their thing. And, an anti-monopoly rule, I can't remember what it is. But essentially what needs to happen is that needs to happen for the NCAA. But in order to do that, they're going to have to be employees. And then that brings in a whole nother set of rules, because you're going to have private schools that go by one rule. Public schools have to go by, the public, issues. Then you're going to have, I mean, if you play for Iowa State, you're going to be taxed with IPERS and have IPERS money. And I mean, it's just, when you have an employee, you've got a lot of stuff. Right now, they don't have that stuff because they aren't employees. They're getting money from the collective, and then they're up to, they're paying taxes and stuff just like that, but they don't have all the other things that come with being an employee of a state university or even an employee of a private university that just, they're 1099 employees, so they're on their own for their workman's comp, just things like that, and medical, and what benefits do you give them, and they're not in on that right now. They're just essentially money or housing or cars. Every contract's a little bit different, but there's a lot of things they don't have to do. But if you're a regular employee, you look at everybody's own paycheck and how many things you get deducted and added. And I know just as a teacher, there's different pots of money that I get paid with, and then a whole bunch of things get deducted too.
Yeah, I mean, everybody involved here, the NCAA, all the conferences, everybody else is involved. You had about 20 years to see this coming. And that's the problem when you don't have a strong leadership group or even a commissioner of a league. This is what it turns into. So I think eventually it'll be good in the long run. I'm all for college kids getting paid. They pay a lot of the bills. But when you don't have a strong leadership group in place, these are the type of things that are going to happen until you get that leadership group put to where they need to be.
Right. If this situation happened in the NFL, and let's just say he was playing for the Browns, and all of a sudden he quits and goes and signs with the Giants, and the Browns thought something went wrong, they could go to the NFL office, go to the commissioner, they'd investigate it, and if the Giants did something wrong, they'd be fined, suspended, lose draft picks, lose whatever. Right now, there's nothing to penalize anybody for anything, because right now we don't know that a rule was violated, because there are no rules. And then, there's no one to look at. And then, who loses in this? I mean, you think about UNLV, there's some places that put them as the group of 5 representative. They're out. They probably started doing some TV money. There was probably a lot of UNLV fans that went and bought rest of the season tickets, or bought tickets for the upcoming game, or bought tickets to go see them on the road somewhere. And now it's gone because they're not the same team, and I'm sure the backup quarterback's not as good as this guy. So I feel bad for everybody. I feel bad for UNLV as a team, because you think about the head coach. He's turning around that program. A few years ago, Iowa State went out there and just absolutely boat raced them. They're 3-0. They beat 2 Big 12 teams. They're fighting for their lives out there in the Mountain West. They're trying to get picked up by the Pac-12, or, Hail Mary to the Big 12 type. They want to get as much money as they can, and winning seasons and winning records and getting to a playoff will go a long ways in helping that. And you felt you had it. Your coaching, your team, your players, and now it's just all gone in an instant. And as a coach and as a teammate of that individual, there is absolutely zero you could have done any different. It's just sad, and that's what's sad about it.
Yeah, these are the consequences of, like I said, the NCAA had seen this coming for a long time, and they wanted to hold their ground, in my opinion, and act like this was never coming. Even though I think we all kind of knew this was eventually going to happen, especially a few years before it did, at least in my opinion. But yeah, you're right. Now you have people that are affected by this that shouldn't be, unintentionally. I'm sure, if the quarterback's something wrong here, I'm sure he didn't want to hurt his coach and teammates. But as you mentioned, if he can go make 700 extra thousand, that's life-changing money. It's a business decision, and there's no rules right now. So what do you do?
I don't know. And like Brent Bloom said today on the podcast, there is zero reason. Now, we don't think it's going to happen, but this could happen tomorrow at Iowa State. This could happen tomorrow at Iowa. This could happen anywhere. And as since that podcast, I think they recorded it this morning. Like I said, the USC guy, lineman, doing the same. The only thing I saw is he has been committed and decommitted like to 3 different schools in a few years, like even when he was in high school. So he's a frequent traveler. Maybe, I think he's a D lineman, so one of those big time recruits that just might not quite be as good as everybody thinks he is. But he's one of those I call looks like Tarzan but might play like Jane.
Yeah, and a lot of these players, they're gonna chase the cash as much and as fast as they can right now, because once enough of these boosters and people that are giving money to the NIL and to all of this, once they keep getting burned so many times, that money's going to start to disappear. It's
Absolutely.
going to be frequent. So right now, a lot of players are grabbing the cash and going. 5 years from now, even if there's rules put in place, there's going to be some donors that have gotten burned multiple times and just say, you know what, not doing this anymore. So that cash will dry up a little bit, I think, in the future.
I do too. And that might be the good thing about it going into the university and in-house, where you're going to get that. And maybe you get burned on the NIL part, but you can say, hey, this is for a facility, or this is for, like Iowa State just redid the sound system in Hilton Coliseum. It can be a donation for things like that, where your money is going to help something for the university and for the student athletes that want to be there.
Yeah, I'm sure that money will still probably come in from a lot of people that donate. But yeah, these are the unintended consequences, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And it'll get fixed. It'll get righted here eventually because it'll have to. There will be enough people that come together, like I said, however they do it exactly. But people want to get this fixed. Universities will want to get this fixed, and so will the conferences.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the next thing to happen is, let's say Ohio State would happen to lose to Iowa and then lose one more game, and you're 5 games into the season and a player's draft eligible. You're probably not getting into the playoff. Do they just stop playing? That's the next thing to drop, is as soon as you're out of the playoff race, you just stop playing. I think that's the next thing to happen as well.
Yeah, there'll be some players that step out. Quarterbacks are going to have to be careful on that. They'll be judged more harshly if they step out like that, and probably as they should be. Running backs not as much, because we know the running backs don't get paid as much in the NFL, and their life expectancy is much shorter given the injuries. But yeah, that's going to come too. But there's still some old school NFL guys that they won't draft a guy due to that, or they won't draft until later.
Correct. I mean, let's not even go to Ohio State, because they have 2 or 3 losses. They're probably going. Let's go Iowa. Let's say they lose another game to, the Ohio State game. Not necessarily going to hurt you that much as long as you don't get killed. But let's say they lose at UCLA. That first week of November, I think, is when that is. This Caleb Johnson, who is I would assume this has got to be his last year at Iowa, running back. They're not going to the playoffs. They're not going to the Big Ten championship game. Does he call it quits? Or someone like that? Can't blame him.
No, I think Leonard Fournette did. Was it Leonard Fournette that did it
Maybe
years ago? I think he might have been the one, and he was still a top 10 pick. Not saying Caleb's going to be that by any means, but
right.
We've seen it in the past, even before all this was going on, and we'll see it moving forward. Maybe there'll be some incentives where you could pay a guy to keep playing, give him a bonus if he sticks out the season. Now, will they? I don't even know if that's a possibility. Of just spitballing here, but yeah, there'll definitely be some guys that start sitting out. But like I said, there's still some old school NFL guys they'll ding guys for that, especially if it's quarterback.
Yeah, and I think obviously the people that are playing in the playoff are going to play for the most part. The bowl games, I think it's super intriguing that instead of paying the school $5 million or whatever they're paying the schools, essentially have a pool of money and you split it up between all the players. And obviously your star player, let's just say it's Iowa State versus Texas A&M. The quarterbacks get 50,000 each. The next best player gets 20,000 each. Just things like that, and then down to your fifth, your 100th player gets $1,000. It's a good deal for everybody involved.
It's not the worst idea, and stuff like that will start coming up. People are going to come up with creative ideas of how to keep the bowl games alive too. I think it's no secret to anyone. There's been too many bowl games for quite a while. Now they're still beneficial to a lot of the schools. I get that, but cutting down on the bowl games a little bit, but still making an incentive to play is a good idea, probably.
Yeah. All right, so that's about 20 minutes there that we weren't necessarily planning on until today, but wanted to hit that and hit that topic and just I think football is just on a brink, and this is just another thing that I just think that football almost needs to go do their own thing. And that's been brought up a lot of times, but more and more, it's just a different sport. It's only 12 games. It's just different than everything else. It's so many more players. Football doing its own thing makes more and more sense to me.
Yeah, football do its own thing with conferences. All the other sports
Go back to your regional,
yeah.
Big 8, Big 12, Big 10, traditional, not the new ones, the traditionals.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to bring up before we move on, we did, and I think I'm going to try to do this, and I'm working on getting better at graphics, and I just put them on Twitter yesterday and today, but our Big 10 and Big 12 rankings / standings, power rankings, whatever you want to call them, we're going to try to do that each week. Try to get it into a better graphic. I wanted to get them up. I have a graphic made and everything, but I didn't like the way it looked, so I did just type them in there. I'm going to work on that, but look for those on Mondays or Tuesdays coming out on Twitter and stuff like that. So it's kind of fun to do, and I think doing those are kind of fun because, especially now, where like Iowa State hasn't played a Big 12 game yet, so I understand why people don't put them as high as some of the other schools that have one win already. So, but we'll start this week with Iowa State. The other, kind of relevant thing that just happened, Caitlin Clark, they did lose. She had a pretty good game. I wouldn't say it was her best game ever. She did play pretty well, hit some big shots. Her team took the lead with about 3 minutes left, I think it was, had an 11-point, we're down 11 in the fourth quarter, came flying back. She made some great plays, great passes. And then Bonner and Marbury, I think is how you say her name, the two veteran stars for Connecticut, hit back-to-back threes and just ended it. And they were both tough shots, I thought.
Well, do you know where Marbury was at earlier this year?
No.
She was on Chicago. They traded her. She wanted out. That she was a really good player for them. That was a big get. I think Connecticut can win it all. But, yeah, if you take out probably the last 4 or 5 minutes of the first quarter and the first few minutes of the second, Indiana probably could have won this game, but it goes back to probably a lack of experience in a lot of ways. And Connecticut's really good. They're better than the Fever are. It does kind of suck that it's only a 3-game series because I think the Fever could have at least got one at home had it been a 5 or even a 7. But, yeah, you got to go back and look where they were the first 12 or 15 games of the year to now. I mean, anybody would have signed up for it. So they got in the playoffs. They got a little playoff road experience. And then hopefully next year can maybe force the game 3 or even move on. I think by next year that the expectation would be to move on to the Final Four.
Right. And I, a lot of people are criticizing the format where it's 2 and then the third one's on the road. I see both sides of it. If you're the favorite team like Connecticut, if Indiana would have pulled that out tonight, and I'm Connecticut, that sucks. Now I got to go to the road, game deciding or series deciding game on the road in Indiana. But that gives you so much more incentive to play those 2 home games and get it over with. Then you don't have to travel at all. So, I mean, it's definitely a give and take, but it's good for that, the favored team or, the higher seed. But yet, if you get to that third game, you are an underdog, especially in Indiana. That place would have been absolutely nuts on Wednesday night.
Yeah, the 3 games a little weird just because we don't see that, in the NBA. They have the playing games now, but which are 1, or I think they're 1. 5 is probably good. The only downfall of that would be, then you extend the WNBA season, and you and I have talked about try to get it done as quick as you can before NFL starts or before football in general starts. But speaking of that Sunday game that the Fever played, that almost got 2 million, 1.8 something million viewers, which is I'm a little shocked, but I'm not shocked at all. That's pretty impressive that the Fever and Caitlin Clark did that on an NFL Sunday.
Right. Yeah, I watched it. I was going back and forth between the NFL games, but I watched a lot of her games, and she's fun to watch. The team got so much better, and it was good to see. And it'll be interesting. They've got some decisions to make in Indiana, and it'll be interesting to see what some of those decisions are.
Yeah, they've got their young core that we've talked about with Clark, Boston, Nalissa Smith. She sat on the bench tonight, which I think may have been okay. You got Lexi Hole, who had a great second half of the season. I've said you got to get Kelsey Mitchell re-signed, but the last 3 or 4 players on that team, I think you can, if you got to cut them to bring someone in, I think that's perfectly fine. But I feel pretty good about their young core. They still got to make some improvements, but after 1 year, all things are pretty positive for the Fever.
Yeah, I agree. It was a net positive.
Mm-hmm.
They made the playoffs. They got better as a team. They just need to add players. And we talked about, I think they need height, and then they need one more shooter. I think that's the two. They can get one more shooter to get in a corner, and then someone that's bigger than Boston. They need one, because she's 6'3" or 6'4", but there's a lot of girls that are bigger than her. And I think they just need one more player that's bigger.
Yeah, I think that's right. One more big, one more good shooter. Now Caitlin and the Fever are going to be off, I think, for 6 or 7 months, which that break will be good. I mean, they'll be practicing a little bit here and there, and once the season gets closer. But now Caitlin really gets an actual long break.
Yeah, that's what she said. She's not going to play overseas. She's not going to do any competitive basketball until next year, and she needs it. They were showing as almost a full calendar year that she's been on the whole time, because that exhibition game in Kinnick Stadium was in October, and we're in the last few days here of September. So just about a calendar year.
Yeah, definitely a well-deserved break. But again, got to think back to those first 12 or 15 games. It was almost unwatchable. And then the last half of the season's been a lot of fun. And so expectations will be high next year, as they should be.
Yeah, and she's going to work on her deficiencies. She always has. She's going to get bigger. She's going to get stronger. She's going to know how to play in the WNBA better. She's going to have an off season to train. And, just a couple things. She's got to get better at shooting to her right. She's got to get a better mid-range. You just really need to get better at everything. She's really, really good at it all, but just a little bit better at everything.
Yeah, I expect to see quite a bit of improvement. Turnovers go down, shooting percentage goes up a little bit, and we'll see how she does on the mid-range shot. And then the team as a whole, now that they've had a full season to play together, the ones that do return next year, maybe add a good draft pick or a free agent, and they really could be off and running.
All right, let's move on to college. Iowa State, we're going to spend about 1 minute on Iowa State. There's really not a lot to talk about. Big win, 52-7 over Arkansas State. Exactly what you wanted to see. A lot of backups played. Connor Moberly is the backup, passed up J.J. Cole. From everything we've seen, he was the one that came in, looked pretty good, did have an interception, was tipped. Several running backs all had, the starting running back didn't even have the most carries. It was absolutely perfect what happened. Traveled to Houston Saturday night. They got beat 34-0 to Cincinnati. I think I had them at the very bottom of the Big 12 rankings. I think you did as well, or if not, maybe you were at 15. They're at the bottom of the rankings. New coach, they will be good. I think Willie Fritz will turn them around, but it's just not this year. And I think we're glad we're playing them now and not November, because they'll be better now than they are, or better then than they are now. Just like Campbell was at Iowa State. They went like 3-9 that first year, but they beat a couple teams at the end of the year that they probably shouldn't have, just because you get better and they start buying in, and you figure out the players that want to be there or not. And some of those players that you think are pretty good end up not playing us because they're not doing the right things and what coaches want. So that's Iowa State in a nutshell over the next week or so.
Yeah, they got that victory to get to 3-0. Just keep plugging away the W's, and as you mentioned, you're probably catching Houston at a good time here because they're new coach. Don't have a lot of camaraderie yet, probably as a team. So this is a good opportunity. Make sure that the team's ready. Go get to 4-0 because the schedule is pretty favorable for Iowa State now that they took care of their first 3 games. We know that's been a struggle for Campbell, is that early part of the schedule, or the schedule each year.
Yeah, it looks. I mean, I got some heck for my predictions, but it's worked exactly as I said so far. And just looking ahead, some of those teams that looked better than we thought aren't as good as we thought. And listen to that same podcast with Williams and Bloom, and they were both like, go down there, do exactly what you did, just like Arkansas State. Now you may not win 52-7, but go get up 21-3. Go put them out of their misery right away. And then if you coast and only win 28-10, it's fine. But don't give them any hope. Go out there, lay it on them for a half really hard, and then coast in that second half is just fine.
Yeah, be ready to go right out of the gates the first quarter. No stupid turnovers or penalties or anything like that. Special teams blunders, and Iowa State should be off and running.
Right. Iowa, really good win. Didn't play good in the second quarter. Caleb Johnson's a stud. They did what they needed to do. Avenge last year's loss. Win a Big Ten road win. Road wins are always hard. Just like Iowa State's going to Houston. I would be predicting, I'm not even going to predict, but I'd be talking should do the same thing as Arkansas State, but it is in Houston. I don't know if we've ever played Houston. The stadium is going to be about empty. There's going to be more Iowa State fans there than Houston fans, I'm sure of it, because there actually is quite a few Iowa State fans in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There's just a lot of people down there, so there's obviously Iowa State people, and they're having a big get-together down there. But Iowa did exactly what they needed to do in the second half, dominated the game, and now you get a week off. And I think this is good, especially for the offense. They can self-scout, self-study, figure out what's working, figure out what's not working, and then obviously you've got the monumental task of Ohio State at Ohio Stadium in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good on paper, having the bye week. I get that. Cade can't hardly play quarterback, so you could give us 1 week, 4 weeks. It's not going to matter. We're going to get blown out.
Yeah,
you're going to have to do more than run the ball versus Ohio State. You're going to have to complete some passes, and Cade McNamara cannot complete passes.
I'm just really surprised at that. And I agree. I mean, unfortunately, I agree with it. You just look at the difference, and I know it's kind of on our list there, but you look at Colorado, and I know Sanders is going to be probably a top 1 or 2 quarterback taken in the draft, but him running to his left and the Hail Mary, 50-some yards in the air, got to the end zone, gave his guy a chance, and he made it. Cade McNamara is your quarterback. You don't have a choice. And I think that Iowa, as a program, I understand that's coach's kid there, so they've got an inside out. But Iowa should have a quarterback on their roster with the ability to make that play. Now, you're not going to complete it. You're not going to complete the Hail Mary, but you got to have a kid that can roll out and throw it 50 yards in the air to the end zone. Or just 50 yards in the air, period, to if you're on the 5-yard line and you're throwing a grow route.
Or how about 50 yards passing and a half? Like every other college football, high school football program, NFL program can do it every single game except Iowa. So, yeah, Caleb Johnson's a stud. The defense is still good enough to make plays. If we go into Ohio State, we're going to need at least 2 turnovers minimum from the defense and a big special teams play to have any chance in that game. But no, I wouldn't be surprised if Cade goes, 6 for 34 for 20 yards in that game. I mean, that's how bad it is. But it's been that way for 6 years. But
Right. And as I don't know if you listened to Zach and I last week when you weren't able to be here, but Kirk Ferentz is one of the best recruiters / evaluators and getting the most out of his players that there is in college football in the last 26 years. He's as good as there is. He doesn't get 4 or 5-star recruits. He gets 2 and 3 stars and turns them into NFL players. But for some reason, he cannot do it at quarterback. His coaches can't. He can't. And it's not just a 5-year deal. That goes all the way back. He has trouble playing. Brad Banks, runner-up Heisman Trophy, only played 1 year because he was sitting behind Kyle McCann, who I know Kyle McCann. He's from Creston, Iowa. But, C.J. Beathard, Drew Tate was probably the best he ever was as a sophomore. He didn't get better as a junior and senior. Just, I don't know what it is about quarterbacks, but they can't do it.
Well, I agree with you to an extent. I disagree a little. Banks, Tate, Ricky Stanzi, and Beathard had some really good moments.
Right.
But since those guys, there's been even more of a drop-off, I guess is the point.
Right.
Cade McNamara has never really had a moment or a long stretch of moments. Spencer Petras didn't. Deacon Hill didn't. Stanzi, Beathard, Tate, they all had, a good season or a good stretch of games where we looked like a competent offense. Now it's even worse than that now.
What do you think about, is it because, the one thing I'll say about Deacon Hill and Spencer Petras, every week they got up and talked. And I don't know if it's McNamara not wanting to or if they're protecting him. But they're not letting him talk to the media like Petras and Deacon Hill did.
I mean, there's not much to say. I mean, he threw for 60 yards. I mean, thanks, Caleb, for bailing me out. I mean, making sure I'm the starter in a couple of weeks. What's he going to say? I don't know. I mean, I hate to rag on the guy like that. It might not be all him, but I don't know. What do you got your quarterback go up and say?
Yeah, it's just weird because I know, I listen to talk radio and, on Tuesdays or whatever, all the players, and he's not there. A lot of weeks where he's late and I know they're going to say it's classes and stuff. I mean, I know what they're saying publicly, but it's just a little bit interesting to me because he's in his 5th or 6th year of college. Those guys he's taken 1 or 2 classes. They're probably online. So.
Yeah, I didn't really know about the interview thing. I haven't paid that close attention just because there's not much I really want to listen to. It's been the same thing, like I said, for 5 or 6 years now. Rinse and repeat. I mean, you're right. I love Kirk Ferentz. He's, as far as getting 0 to 3-star recruits, developing them and put them in the NFL, there arguably is nobody better. But this quarterback thing, it's just rinse and repeat. And we might win 7, 8, 9, 10 games, and we'll go get our doors blown off by the really good ones.
And I don't think you have Ohio State. Anybody else ranked on your Illinois? You don't play Illinois this year. Nebraska was ranked.
I know Nebraska. I can't remember if we play Illinois or not.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, if not, then it's just Ohio State at the moment. But
I know Iowa State, the only ranked team they have left, or Iowa was ranked. They're not now, but is Utah. Kansas State. It depends what polls. Some polls are in like 23rd or 24th, and some of them they're out. But that's the last 2 games. So that's what we were talking earlier. Iowa State's got an opportunity to be 6, 7, 8, be ranked about number 10 in the country. Everybody's starting to talk about you, and that's what you have. It's a television product and it's a TV show. You want to be part of the storyline. And then that's when the committee will start listening. When ESPN starts talking about you, you got a chance. Unfortunately, that's reality.
What you also got to root for now is you want Notre Dame to lose as many games as possible.
Yeah, you want Notre Dame out.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want Iowa to win, and you want Iowa to keep winning. You really do. I mean, if Iowa could finish 10-2, that'd be great for Iowa State. As long as Iowa State has to do their job too. They have to finish 10-2, 11-1. Iowa goes 10-2, and then we need Notre Dame to lose 3 games.
Yeah, because Notre Dame can lose a couple, and they're still going to have the TV. You and I talked about this a few weeks ago. They're going to push for Notre Dame, but if Notre Dame's got 3 or 4 losses,
especially if they're depends on who they do. But yeah, if somehow they could lose to Florida State and then lose to USC, that'd be 3 and 2 not good. If they only lose to USC, probably still in.
Mm-hmm.
It's only 2 losses, 1 to USC at the end of the year. as long as USC does pretty good. Well, they lost to Michigan. I mean, unless USC's 6-6, I mean, that'd be the other thing. But
Yeah, because Notre Dame's got, they call it, and we've talked about this before, Notre Dame has the most sidewalk fans of any college football program, meaning people that didn't actually go to Notre Dame, they're just fans of them. So the TVs are going to want Notre Dame in, but if they've got 3 or 4 losses, I think you have to kick them out at that point.
right, and especially on who they lose to. I mean, they've got an easy schedule too. I mean, right now you could say Iowa State's schedule is super easy, and that's when you have to take advantage of it.
Yeah, no, everything is in Iowa State's control right now, though, which is good. You got through that first part of the schedule. Now you've got the middle chunk, and we'll see what happens after the next 4 or 5.
All right, other college, and you made we kind of touched on it, but Colorado, they might not be very good, but they are fun and they're interesting. I mean, it's never dull. I will say that.
Yeah, that was an amazing finish. That's the best you can ask for any type of football game, a play like that to end it. Joel Klatt mentioned it today on FS1. Colorado's been good as an underdog, but when they get a big win or something, they don't handle winning very well. So I'll be interested to see how they do. They're at UCF this week, and I had UCF ranked really low just because they haven't played anybody.
Right.
You put our rankings there on Twitter. So I don't know if UCF is really good yet. I'm not buying into them at the moment just because they've played nobody on their schedule, which we'll find out now that they're actually getting into the real games.
Yeah, they had a bye last week, just like Iowa State, so they have not played a Big 12 game, and they still have. I mean, and this will be interesting. Now, Florida's not Florida. They go to Gainesville coming up here, and so that'll be a big game for them. One is just on the road in an SEC game. I don't care if Florida's awesome or Florida's awful. That's a tough game, and Napier's fighting for his job. But I think according to Vegas, at least some books, Central Florida's second behind Utah. I mean, the thing they have is Gus Malzahn, who's been there before, and that helps them. Obviously they're new to the Power 5, but they've got the staff and the infrastructure that knows what it takes. So that helps them compared to Willie Fritz, who has not been in a Power 5 before. Now, obviously, he's in his first year, but, just like a Butch Jones at Arkansas State, they're not real good right now. And I think this is his second year, maybe third. But they know what it takes, and they've seen the operation run. Now, I don't think Gus Malzahn was on the Nick Saban rehabilitation tour. I know Butch Jones was. I don't think Malzahn probably was invited there since he was the coach at Auburn. But he doesn't get to go there.
No, probably not. And UCF might be better than where I had him ranked. I just couldn't put him too high yet until I actually see him play some real teams. And then real quick, for anyone that saw your Twitter poll, I had USC ranked ahead of Michigan. I know they just lost to him.
Right.
I don't care. I think USC is going to be better at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But I'm projecting how it's going to finish. The last game of the year, and you could say, well, they beat them heads up. Yeah. So the Raiders beat the Chiefs last year too.
Right.
One team won the Super Bowl and one team didn't make the playoffs. So the head-to-head stuff, it matters, especially if there's like tiebreakers and things like that. But mine was more projecting how to look at the end of the year.
I mean, I agree. Head-to-head matters, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, there's lots of times where teams are ranked ahead, or like you said, the Raiders beat the Chiefs last year. The Raiders are not a better football team than the Chiefs.
No, they're arguably the worst franchise of the last 25 years. So teams win. If you want the standings, go look at the standings. This wasn't that.
No. All right, let's move on to the NFL. A lot of interesting things happen. There are some. How are the Bengals 0-3? How are the 49ers 1-2? I don't know how they lost that football game. I mean, there was a lot of things that had to happen for them to lose that football game. And I'm going to go there just because, Brock Purdy is an Iowa State guy. I follow him. He's a stud. He don't have anybody around him right now. They're all hurt, but he can play. And he's earning a lot of money right now.
Yeah, he definitely is, and I put him in my top 10 in the quarterback ranks, and I think I had him there at 8 because eventually he has to start getting credit. He's a better mover than people give him credit for. He's got more of a whip on his arm than people give him credit for, and he made a throw. I think it was week 1 versus the Jets, third or fourth quarter. They were in, I don't know, the 20 or 30-yard line of the Jets, and the pocket was closing around him. He just stood there flat-footed and threw it all the way across the field. I think it was to Brandon Ayuk, maybe the only catch or two he had in the game. And there's not a lot of quarterbacks that can make that throw. Mahomes can, Allen can, Burrow maybe. Most quarterbacks, when that pocket's collapsing like that, they panic. They take off, and he just stood there and made the throw. There's not a lot of guys that can do that.
Right. And did Ayuk catch it? He probably dropped it.
Yeah, no, that was one. I think it was Ayuk. I could be mistaken.
Yeah,
I'd have to go back.
I'm just joking because he was like 25 for 37 with 6 drops. I mean, it was crazy on Sunday. And, he had the game-winning play to Ronnie Bell, and he just dropped it. I mean, field goal missed. But just, like you said, I'm super impressed. No one who would have thought it. And you think, so he was the last draft pick, probably shouldn't even have made the team. Now he's going to get paid all this money. And then Bryce Young, who's the number 1 pick in the draft, gets benched. And then they bring in the old Red Rocket, Andy Dalton, and they look great. It's just like, and I understand whatever, but it's just amazing how some people get it and some don't. And it's franchise, it's coaching, it's just situation. And unfortunately, teams just miss. And I'm wondering I don't think the Bears missed on Caleb Williams, but I think they messed it up again. I think he's a really good player, but they did not address the offensive line, and Eberflus is not a good head coach.
It appears to be that way. There's a lot of people saying that they should have brought in a new coach regardless, even though they had a strong finish to the season. It's looking like that now. Now, Caleb's gotten better the first 3 weeks. I'm not ready to bail on him yet, but yeah, you look at some of these organizations, they can't get certain positions right, and the Bears can't get quarterback right. I'm not giving up yet. It's only 3 games. Right. He's still got this.
But again, he can be great, but it's just the situation he's in. I mean, it's bad. I mean, he is running for his life. He's going to get killed out there.
Yeah, there's not buyer's remorse. That'd be the wrong way to put it. But when they took Rome Odunze, I love Rome Odunze. He's the type of receiver I would want. He's not a diva. He's like Larry Fitzgerald Jr. And typically, I wouldn't fall for this because you and I are both big on the O-line. But you almost wonder if they should have took an O-lineman there rather than the receiver. And it's looking like that right now. So they've got to get things turned around. They probably, Caleb's got to start looking better the rest of the way and be a potential playoff team for Eberflus to keep his job.
I thought it was funny when he threw the touchdown pass to Odunze, and it was obviously they're both first touchdown, and he was running from, and that's what you love to see. They're enjoying it. It's their first touchdown. And then, in the Redskins, I guess the Commanders game, same situation. You've got Jaden Daniels' first touchdown pass to the lineman and be his one and only catch probably ever in his career. It's like, you probably should give it to the lineman because Daniels looks like he's going to have hundreds of them. He looks awesome. And he's one of those, I just worry, and it's the same franchise. RG3 was a stud too his first year or two. And he's kind of that same type of player. I think he has a way better arm and is probably a better quarterback, but it's that he does give you that vibe that he wants to run, he can throw it. And I know the NFL is going more to that, and those quarterbacks are more successful than they used to be, but there still comes a point where you got to stand in there and being in the NFC, you got to go to Green Bay. It's cold out. January 15th, NFC Championship game or divisional round, whatever you want to say it, and you got to be able to take it, and you got to stand there and throw it around where you're not be able to to run it everywhere.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see him put on a little weight as his career progresses in year 2 and on. He did have a point there where he did slide in the game. He gained some yards, but you could tell the coaches were happy. The difference now with Washington from when RG3 was there is they've got the new owner, new GM, everything's new there. So maybe they'll have a better plan for him. Dan Quinn was a good coach in Atlanta. It didn't end very great, but maybe they'll have a better plan for Jaden Daniels than what the old Washington did for RG3.
And with Dan Quinn going there, kind of going, how bad is Dallas's defense without him? Holy smokes.
Yeah, I mentioned before the season started a few weeks, I said no one's really talking about the loss of Dan Quinn. And I did end up picking Dallas to make the playoffs when we did our predictions. I thought they would do it. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe it's Washington that wins this one. They haven't had a consecutive winner, I think, in however many years. Dallas's defense, as you just mentioned, is awful. One of the worst in the league, basically at everything. They have no running game on offense, which we talked about. And they brought back Zeke. I mean, that's been basically worthless. So if you can't run and you can't stop the run, you're probably not going to be very good.
No, and Jerry Jones I think it was last week or the week before, him just shaking his head. I mean, he knows it's bad. And it's not, I don't know. But they're in a division that I think they can still win because they've got talent. They just got to put it together.
Yeah, it's not looking good right now. And as you know, I'm still not sold on the Eagles. Jalen still got a lot of turnovers. Sirianni had some really, in my opinion, dumb decisions against that game against the Saints that they pulled it out. Barkley's been an amazing addition. There's no doubt about that. He's a top 5 MVP guy right now. But the head coach and the turnovers, I'm still holding firm that I think Sirianni's gone after the year. But we'll see as the season progresses.
I agree. Anything else in the NFL you want to talk about? I can't remember what.
Let's talk Trevor Lawrence a little bit.
Okay.
Obviously, Josh Allen and the Bills, they performed well, but the real story is Lawrence. What was it? 2.5 or 3 years ago, they had that amazing comeback in the playoffs against the Chargers. Then the following year, which was last year, they start out 8-3. They're rolling, and I think Trevor Lawrence hasn't won a game since being injured. He looks lost, and that John Middlecoff, I sent you a little video of him earlier a few days ago. He put it pretty well. It's kind of harsh, but he said Trevor Lawrence is just the better human version of Deshaun Watson right now. They're both bottom 7 quarterbacks in the league. They're awful. I mean, Trevor Lawrence he's not even middle of the pack. He's a for sure bottom 10 quarterback right now. And they paid him all that money when they didn't have to.
Right. Because his rookie deal would just be up now, right?
No, they still have another 5th-year option and then a franchise tag.
Okay.
So they did it 2 years, probably a year before they really would have wanted to, but even 2 years. So if they play at Houston this week, and if they lose that game, which is very likely, I wouldn't be surprised if Shad Khan makes Doug Peterson fire the OC. Basically gives him an ultimatum: you fire the OC or I'm firing you. Right. So Press Taylor, the Jags OC, if they lose that game or Trevor Lawrence isn't good, don't be surprised if he isn't fired immediately after the game.
I hadn't thought of it. Yeah, I mean, we're starting to get there. And speaking fired coaches, I mean, Baylor's coach has got to be on the hot seat. I would say Eberflus is probably getting short leash if they don't start playing a little bit better. At least Shane Waldron, they brought him in, but he's got to be on a short leash. Sorry. And then the Bengals are 0-3 again. Now, this is not new for the Bengals. They do not do well in, like, Andy Reid and the Chiefs win every game in September, and they have even when they weren't winning Super Bowls, they'd be 3-1 or 4-0. Joe Burrow is awful in September.
Well, he's actually the last 2 weeks. He's actually played really well.
Right,
I thought,
but just his record. Yeah, he's played fine, but
it's not good. And they 0-3. I heard a stat that 26% of all playoff teams in NFL history had a 3-game losing streak at one point or another. The problem is they didn't have it to start the season. They had it somewhere in the middle or toward the end. And I think I forget what the stats are, but 0-3 is really bad. I forget the schedule. Usually I have my computer up on my phone so I can kind of look at it as I'm going.
Right.
But I think they're at Carolina. They got to go down there and get that win or whoever they're playing. It doesn't matter. You can't go to 0-4 regardless of who they're playing this week.
And then you kind of go on the opposite spectrum where a team that didn't expect to be a lot and then their quarterback gets hurt and you go with Sam Darnold and they look awesome, the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I say this over and over, situation, coaching, franchise, the Vikings are always pretty good. They don't ever suck. They're always right around 500. And, people forget Sam Darnold was the number 3 pick in the draft. So people thought highly of him. He was really good in college. And he's just been in some bad situations. You think about who his coaches have been, they've not been good. Adam Gase was really bad. Steve Wilkes was not good for Carolina. So now he finally has a quarterback's coach. He said, I watched that game on Sunday, and they talked about how Brock Purdy taught him a lot on how to study and everything. And that's weird because Brock Purdy should have been learning from him. As we said, Brock Purdy was the last pick of the draft. Sam Darnold was a top pick. Sam Darnold, more veteran, just now getting to a veteran status, but been in the league a while. He should know how to do his stuff. But maybe that's why Brock Purdy passed a whole bunch of people in San Francisco and will be signing a big deal, I'm assuming with San Francisco, but if it's not with San Francisco, somebody will give him a lot of money.
Oh, it'll be San Francisco. I'd be willing to bet just about my life on it. He'll be resigned.
I do too.
It's
I think him and Shanahan are kind of attached at the hip.
Yeah, Mike Silver, I just listened to a podcast he was on earlier when I went on for a walk, and he said Mike Silver knows Shanahan pretty well. He was interviewing him a little bit before the season started when Trey Lance was still on the team. And he said Shanahan couldn't stop talking about Brock Purdy. And then before the first game of the season, he did an interview. I think that year they played the Bears week 1. And Adam Silver said, yeah, but when you have a guy like Brock Purdy in the building, you don't let him leave. And this before Brock Purdy had played a regular season game ever in his career. So he's not leaving. And then getting to Sam Darnold, there's one I was way off on my rankings. I thought, we've seen real people come back a little bit. Geno Smith's a success story, but typically you don't see that very often. And then that kind of turns into Kevin O'Connell's got to be the coach of the year so far.
Oh, absolutely. It's not close. They look good. They're good. And Brian Flores has his faults. And, he came out and said he regretted how he treated Tua and everything. But he can coach defense, and that defense is good right now for Vikings.
They've the past 2 teams they've played is the Shanahan offense.
Right.
The Texans with their OC, and then obviously playing the 49ers, and he shut them down for the most part, as good as anybody can for that matter.
Right.
So he'll be getting another opportunity, and him coming out right away and kind of apologizing and owning it, that's going to help him get another job, I think, in the future.
And he came from Belichick, who did it the Belichick way, and kind of being a jerk or whatever is just kind of the way they do it. And I think he learned from it, I hope, and then going to another franchise and seeing how it's done. And Kevin O'Connell doesn't seem that way to me. Just go about your business, do your work, and yeah, it might be a few years, but he'll get another chance. I don't think he's not going to get one right away, but unless they would, shouldn't say that. If they go somehow get a Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl or even NFC Championship game, someone's going to have to take a chance.
Yeah, and you look at all the guys that succeed that come from these coaching trees. All the Shanahan guys succeed. All the McVay guys succeed. All the Andy Reid guys succeed. None of the Belichick guys do. Yep. Belichick was the outlier. He had built in him and Brady. We'll probably never see that again because you can't really, especially nowadays, I don't know if you can treat athletes like Bill did and just make everything secret. It's just, it worked. There's no doubt about it, but I don't think that's going to work moving forward.
Yeah, And he was a genius on knowing when to get rid of people. I mean, he definitely got rid of them a year too early. That he never had anybody stay too long, and that was his huge thing. He'll sign you, he'll do whatever, but it's a short. Besides Brady, it was short term.
Yeah, it was short term, and they didn't hand out big contracts unless they were very certain, which is it really is a smart way to do it. He's one of the best to ever do that. You know, the last 5 or 6 years, he did a lot of the drafting for New England, which is why they're in the position they are now. He missed a lot of draft picks, and that we talk about the draft all the time. You have 2 or 3 good drafts in a row, you can beat the Lions. You have 2 or 3 bad ones in a row, and you're the Patriots.
Speaking of teams that go from top to bottom, survivor pools. I did not get any this year. I haven't for the last couple. There's the Mega Millions or whatever you want to call it, the one that Circa does, had like 14,000 people in it. 95% of them are gone because each week the biggest favorite has lost. I mean, the NFL is unbelievable. You know, the Bengals lost opening week. Who was week 2 that got upset?
I think it was it the Ravens?
Yeah, the Raiders beat the Ravens.
Yeah.
In Baltimore. Yeah, and then who upset who this last week?
Well, I know the Washington, I think, was a 6.5 point dog at the
Yeah,
Bengals.
so it might have been that. And then, you know, the Rams coming back beating the 49ers was another big one.
That was another one. So, yeah, the margins are small.
Who beat Tampa? That might have been the biggest one.
I forget now who beat Tampa. Tampa had a really bad game. They played. Right. I forget.
It might have been the Tampa one because they had looked good for a couple weeks. But all 3 weeks, the top and just 95% of the team's already out. So the entry fee for that is $1,000. The implied value to everybody that's left is already up to $22,000 because the winner gets like $8 million.
Yeah, it'd be nice to still be in that one. That's the NFL though. The margins are small. A lot of games come down to field goals. Underdogs, even teams that win 3 or 4 games a year, they can go out and win any Sunday. So you talk about a couple games coming up this week. Obviously tomorrow night, Dallas is at the Giants. That's an early season must-win for Dallas to kind of keep their morale alive. And then the last thing I wanted to really finish on, or I didn't have written down. I guess we can keep going, but Monday night, I think it's either Monday or Sunday night, Seahawks play at the Lions. And the Lions got these really cool black and like metallic blue jerseys. I don't know if you've seen them. So that's just a random thing I'm looking forward to because those jerseys look really cool from what I've seen.
Yes, I did see a picture of them today on, I don't know, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it was. They do look good. Speaking of uniforms, Iowa State's going to come out in whites. They're doing kind of the reverse thing, white out on October 5th. They're going to wear white. Baylor's wearing the dark, kind of switching. So they're switching up there. And it's going to be a white out. First time Iowa State in Jack Trice Stadium has ever done a white out. So we'll see how that goes. And I will not be there. I've got golf Ryder Cup that day. But
okay.
Nope. Anything else really with the NFL? We're right at about an hour here. Or anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that's it for this week. We tried doing the live version. Hopefully that went okay. Maybe this week we'll just kind of cut it off now, unless you've got something else.
Nope, I really don't. Obviously we could talk forever, but we're good here. Hour, so we'll be back next week. Thanks for tuning in. I know some people have been off and on a little bit here, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk next week.
Have a good night.